There was a smallpox outbreak on board, which killed a lot of people before arrival. And when they finally got to the island, the settlers found almost no infrastructure or supplies there. Despite what it looks like today, nobody did shit with that island back then, right? And they were waiting on a second supply ship, which never came. They were delayed by disputes between New York investors and the Interior Department over like releasing funding. So just typical bureaucratic red tape plagued this mission. And so with no supplies, the colonists were basically stranded with very little food, shelter, or medicine really. And basically hunger and disease spread super rapidly here.
Yeah. And then things got really bad. How this ends is that Koch ends up declaring himself governor without U.S. approval. And it makes sense to manage the crisis.
Governor Koch.
So when the U.S. government finds out, they're like, oh, shit. Like, what is going on there?
Mm-hmm.
They start getting reports that these settlers are dying. And they launch an official investigation. And Lincoln comes out and he admits the project failed. So they end up ordering the Navy to evacuate the survivors. So there was 368 were rescued and about 100 had died.
Jesus.
So just it's a pretty high mortality rate.
Yeah.
And this was a huge political hit for Lincoln.
For sure, because it was like a cruel and wasteful. Like it's fucked up.
Well, this and imagine if they went to death,
Panama,
Bay of Death.
I know, right? Everybody would have died, and there wouldn't have been any survivors.
Yeah, most likely that would have been horrible. That would have been horrible.
Yeah.
But so this effectively ends the colonization plan schemes. It also turns basically everyone against it.
Mm-hmm.
That this shit show takes place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this isn't the only thing, because I read that he also was looking into like diplomatic solutions, right? Like he wasn't just looking at private colonization schemes, right? Like he was trying to work like directly with foreign governments that might take Black immigrants, right?
So yeah, he was mainly working with Britain and the Netherlands, both which had colonies in the Caribbean, and they both needed labor after abolishing slavery, because slavery was abolished in these countries in the early 19th century. So in late January of 1863, Lincoln had a meeting with Lyons, and he had asked if Britain would accept free Black Americans into the Caribbean colonies,
mm-hmm.
and there was obviously like legal. There were legal things that they had to go through in terms with the British and the Confederacy, because the British didn't want to seem like they were actually supporting one side during the Civil War. And Lincoln had to clarify that they weren't talking about escaped slaves, that they were only talking about legally freed slaves.
Mm.
So they didn't want this to be. So the British were worried that they would be tied to they would be essentially like partners in what would have been, I guess, a criminal act of stealing slaves,
trafficking,
and
basically,
bringing them to human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
But the British were showing real interest, especially in resettling, because there was a lot of underpopulated colonies that the British had acquired, especially in like British Honduras and British Guyana. So the British were experiencing these like chronic labor shortages. So they came up with a plan that the British Honduras Company would manage, and they would manage the migration of up to 500,000 freedmen to Belize over 10 years. And this was supposed to unfold gradually to avoid disruptions in the war effort or the flooding of colonies all at once. And Lincoln was very enthusiastic about Britain's colonization proposal. However, Congress and even most of his cabinet members were unaware of his dealings with the British, and Lincoln was fearing backlash from the radical Republicans. So he used essentially executive authority to move these plans forward. But this new problem arose, and essentially what ends this is that By the summer of 1863, the War Department was saying that the Union required black labor for the war effort, and they needed black men in uniform. So recruitment took precedent over colonization.